Good morning, everyone. I'm Dan Lambert, and I'm from Business Architecture Info. And we have the pleasure today to do a webinar about choosing the right cloud architecture for your firm with Axel Dancoisne from the company WBIS Consulting and Training. SaaS applications, migrations to data centers, and the use of cloud computing in general generate hopes and are becoming essential to a business success. However, too often it's done without enough architecture and planning, and cost savings never occur as promised. Without proper business and enterprise architecture, cloud initiatives are bound to disappoint management. And we have Axel Dancoisne to talk about this subject at length. Antoine is a very experienced and a very good enterprise architect that has a bunch of TOGAF certification. He knows about business analysis and business architecture. He can talk to you about cyber security, strategy, and architecture inside out. He's done organizational change management. He knows about program and project management, requirements engineering, service delivery management, strategic planning and execution, stakeholder engagement, and management and user experience.
Yes. All right. Top of the morning to you good people. Very happy to be here with you today. We're going to share some of our findings and experience over the past few years with you guys. Maybe I would like to do a little bit more about this slide before we move on. I have effectively started working for myself in my little company called WBIS Consulting and Training, WBIS City for short. And as you can see in the list of services that I offer, I can cover quite a bit of ground. Now, if you're pleased, at the end of the presentation, I've got a little QR code that will be easy for you to capture to find both our website to Daniel and I. There's quite a good stuff on both our website. Have a lot of good stuff for you guys if you're curious. And a good architect, as you know, is always a curious one. So today I would like to share something about what I understand about architecture, but would like to put an emphasis on the power of business architecture. We talk more and more about it. It's becoming a bit of a fashion buzzword maybe, but what does it really mean? Of course, when we talk about business architecture, our primary engagement is to keep the customer happy. And I also would like to share a couple of things about that. I will also talk about the concept of abstraction. And I think that for the solution designers amongst you all, this will probably be an eye-opener. Depends if you have done the TOGAF training, especially with me. I talk a lot about abstraction and define it, give a lot of examples, make sure that people absorb that and use it as theirs. And of course, because the main subject is about cloud, I'll share a few things. You may already know some of them, if not all of them. But what I like to do is combine them and probably contextualize cloud architecture with business architecture. And I think that's probably why we're all here today. So some examples, etc. We'll finish with some best practices. And of course, it wouldn't be complete if we did not talk about solutions and implementation. So that will be the last bits I will cover. Without much further ado, I want to share with you my own framework. I created that about 12, no, almost 13 years ago now. It's called the WBIS City, of course. SURF is for Strategy, Information, Resources Framework. And this has always been, for me, the aim of simplifying, keeping everything simple, but also to be used as the glue that actually binds a plethora of very powerful tools out there. You could talk about Ansoff Matrix, the Boston Consulting Group Growth Share Matrix. You could talk about, I don't know, the SWOT analysis. I mean, all these tools are fantastically powerful in themselves, but in their own right. But how do we actually combine them and make them like legal blocks, basically, like we say in architecture, legal blocks, bind them together to leverage the power of unity for all these tools? This is what the SURF, amongst a few other things, is aiming at providing. So I use this to simplify things and always keep the clearest view possible for my stakeholders in general, the clients, more particularly, to ensure that we're always talking about the same thing. Communication is key for me in architecture, whether it be in business or enterprise architecture. The enterprise architect role, as you may not know, is mostly a governance role. It's someone who organizes and keeps basically the flow of work running correctly. The second tool I like to use is Zachman taxonomy, because I love the wholeness, the traceability, the completeness of this taxonomy. I think that, and you will probably see it through the presentation when I mention the terms contextual, conceptual, logical, physical. These are the terms to allow you to understand why we have, for instance, abstraction versus solution design. And last but not least is the Open Group Architecture Framework, TOGAF for short, architecture development methodology. This one, I've been working with it for the best part of 15 years, I would say, when I was working for State Department, Mine Roads and so on, State Department, Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestries in Queensland, Australia. And I've been slowly over the years, over the months, first over the years, trying to sensibilize people on how to actually, stop them from jumping the gun and go straight to solution. So when I talk about the context, I will talk about the preliminary phase. I'll talk about the concept for the phase A, and the logical, the abstraction, the logical. This is what I call the B, C, and D. This is where, I put the B, C, and D into the limelight, because this is where those domain architects will use abstraction, logical abstraction, to create a design that down the line in phase E will be turned into a solution per se. The solution, as you know, will be bound to implementation details and products. This one I took from my friend Danielle, because I thought it says it all in one picture. We say picture says 1,000 words. When I have my clients that I train, whether in business architecture, enterprise architecture, and so on, it's to make them understand the difference between a business architect and the other domain architects, namely data, application, or technology architect, or even the security architects, actually. The business architect doesn't work just for the enterprise architecture team, but also works upstream into understanding, and to cut it short, to understand the business that's at stake, to basically contextualize the architecture that's coming. So here it is. This is where it sits basically in the big framework versus the EA. So we know now that the EA enterprise architecture practice as a capability is pretty much also some kind of specialized program/project management. But the business architects also works with BAs, with the CXOs, into making sure that the enterprise is sound. So to engage the client for maximum value has always been my motto when I've been training or consulting, making sure that people understand this is really what they have to keep in mind all the time. So for that, to me personally, it's fundamental. It's a fundamental principle in the world of business and service delivery. And it involves fostering a strong, open, and collaborative relationship with the client to understand their needs, their expectations, and their goals. And you have to do that absolutely fully, and you have to be really happy with it before you can move on to the next step. By actively listening to the client, asking insightful, meaningful questions, and demonstrating a genuine interest in their success, the businesses and professionals can provide solutions and service that not only meet, but I hope exceed expectations of the clients. And what I mean by businesses is also encompasses the business architects, which are, who are part of business. So the first thing I said in the course of TOGAF is that, guys, I know some of you are technician, are geeks like me, but we're not going to talk about technology. We're going to talk about business for the next 4 days. Some of them are quite surprised. And I said, because this is what the essence of architecture is about. So effective engagement also includes regular communication, sharing progress updates, and seeking feedback to continuously refine and improve the client experience. when clients feels valued, heard, and actively engaged, it does not only strengthen the relationship that you have with them, but also maximizes the value that you deliver. And it leads to long-term partnership, generally, with mutual success. I mentioned before that beside the context the conceptual level in phase A, where we get a vision of what needs to be done, we also try to come up as quickly as possible with an abstraction of what needs to be eventually built and deployed. The abstraction of the logical design is also a critical step in a process of creating an efficient and scalable systems and solutions down the line, as we've seen in photograph in phase E. So it's, I would say it involves distilling complex systems or concept into a simplified and structured representation, of course. It must be free from the specifics of implementation or technical details. In information technology and software development, for instance, logical design abstracts the underlying technical infrastructure, and it focuses on the architecture, the data models, and other functionalities, but always at an abstract level. The abstraction allows for better understanding and communication, because 90% of the work of an architect, as you know, is communication. And that amongst all the stakeholders involved, whether it be clients, supplier, and so on, enabling effective planning and decision-making. It also facilitates adaptability and future-proofing, as changes or upgrades can be made, for example, at the logical level without disrupting the entire system as we wish. In essence, you would say that abstraction of the logical design is the bridge that connects the high-level concepts and practical implementation. It makes it a crucial element in the creation of robust and adaptable solutions. Of course, if you want to go cloud, because actually that's the main subject here, in order for you to achieve your designs in a better way, which is what we all hope, we have to consider certain things. Those things, amongst others, that's not an exhaustive list, but is, of course, everybody wants to understand what's so good about cloud. What are the real benefits? What type of clouds are we looking at, etc. So we'll cover those in a succinct manner. We don't have too much time to go deep in that, and I'm by no means an expert in cloud. It wouldn't be complete if I don't actually talk about security and compliance, which is something people are really worried about, because when they buy cloud, they tend to trust the supplier and hope for best. We'll talk about scalability and cost consideration, because at the end of the day, everybody wants to know the ballpark figure, the dollar sign basically at the end. So once we covered all that in details, I want to share also what else we can do with cloud and why we should go cloud with it, and not necessarily think it's the panacea. First, we talk about cost efficiency. Cloud architecture allows business to reduce upfront infrastructure costs and pay for resources as needed, optimizing the budget allocation. That's the idea. In scalability, we tend to ask for it to offer the ability to easily scale resources up or down to meet the changing demands, ensuring an efficient use of resources. In flexibility, the cloud solution should provide this flexibility to choose services and configuration that best suit the specific business needs that are being captured by the business architect. If we look at TOGAF in phase A, for instance, during the engagement with the client. As far as disaster recovery is concerned, cloud-based backups and data redundancy enhance the disaster recovery capabilities, reducing downtime and data loss, because generally we're talking about people with a lot of gear, a lot of means to be able to ensure duplications of system. And that's generally what redundancy is about, isn't it? In terms of collaboration, cloud platforms facilitate seamless collaboration among remote teams, for instance. Especially in Australia, we have people scattered over the very wide country, and done through centralized data access, as we have in the main capital cities. And for automation, we have these automation tools in cloud architecture that streamline all the processes we used to do mostly manually when we had, the legacy systems and on-premises systems, reducing hopefully manual intervention and human errors. You know what they say, it takes a human to make a big mistake, but it takes a computer to make an absolutely massive mistake. So depending how the systems are set up, we may or may not effectively leverage the benefit of cloud on this instance. So the different types of cloud we have at the moment available to us are public, private, hybrid, or multi-cloud. The public cloud, those are services and resources that are owned and operated by third-party cloud providers and are accessible over the internet. The private ones are resources dedicated to a single organization, and they're offering more control and customization. Of course, often they're hosted on premises or in a data center. The hybrid one combines the elements of public and private cloud to create a, I would say, unified, flexible environment that suits diverse business needs. And the multi-cloud involves using services from multiple cloud providers. It allows you to avoid vendor lock-in, and leverage the strength of different platforms. Factors to consider. Again, we've got the workload requirements. That's understanding the specific requirements of your applications and workloads. That is crucial when you choose a cloud architecture. And if it's overlooked, then you will find yourself in capacity issues. And it's sometimes much more costly to ask for more than having this kind of huge capacity at first that you may reduce down the track if you don't use it. Data sensitivity, we consider the sensitivity of your data and whether it requires enhanced security and compliance measures. For that, as I will cover a bit of security down the track, it's important that you have an asset classification system in place. If you don't have that, well, you will never know what you need to protect and to what extent. Regulatory compliance ensure that your chosen cloud architecture complies with industry and regional regulations. I mean, I don't know if I have to sell you that. I think everybody understands, especially if you work in government or large corporations. You've heard of HAPAA or GDPR or PCI DSS, things like that. Budget constraints. That's where the CFO comes in and asks you to actually, rein in all your expenses. Well, we assess your budget, but you shouldn't actually go shopping with a budget in mind. You should first do this abstraction level, the abstract design that allows you to find out, okay, I need to do that. What is the most efficient and therefore cost-effective way to do what I need to do? And I think that's the best approach. That's the most logical approach. It ensures that your chosen cloud architecture complies with not what you need to have in security, but also it assess your budget and choose the right solution that aligns with basically your financial resources, your capex and opex, etc. And don't forget, once you buy something from a capex perspective, capital expenditure perspective, don't forget that there will be running costs down the line. And if the operation expenditures do not follow, you may find yourself with a bridge to nowhere. The existing infrastructure will consider how your existing IT systems in place and design landscape, etc., can integrate with a chosen cloud architecture. When we talk about hybrid, when people talk about private, they sometimes call a fairly redundant and large capacity system that they call a private cloud, that for some instances they connect to the external public cloud. In this instance, they realize sometimes at high expenses that what they're trying to do is not fully integratable, I should say, and interoperable. And therefore they have a lot of problems and that are very costly mistakes that they wish didn't have by just pushing everything to the cloud. And scalability needs, we always want more, right? And if we're successful, generally, we tend to grow. If we grow, we need to be able to have those systems, those support, to follow us as well. We need to evaluate whether the architecture can easily scale to accommodate growth. If you have too strict contracting, and contract in place with your cloud provider, that could be a major hindrance to your growth. So public cloud, cost-effective, scalable, managed by third-party providers, suitable for a wide range of applications and startup. The private cloud offers more control, customization, and security. It may require high upfront costs as well, and management resources. You need to have your own staff to look after it. That's not negligible, especially nowadays when people struggle to find, for example, good security analyst or good security architect. It's not always available when you need it the most. It's ideal, though, for organizations with strict compliance requirements or those who have very specific security needs. I'm talking about some government agencies, intelligence agencies, etc. Ultimately, the choice between public and private cloud architectures depends really on your organization's specific needs. And that's where I talk about business architecture again here, because who better than a business architect can actually define what your specific business needs are, right? That's the business architect's job, and they're expert at that. The budget, the security consideration, the compliance requirements, all these can be also discussed with other stakeholders, your CFO, CISO, if you have one, etc. But a business architect is really crucial in that part of the decision process. Many organizations also opt for hybrid cloud solutions to combine the advantages of both public and private clouds, like I said before, to make also unique business goals that they know the market cannot fulfill entirely. But I just warn you about some of the aspects that I've found over the years where there could be a bit of an issue there and caveats that are not negligible. So the public cloud pros. Well, I think everybody tends to agree that now with a very competitive costing, scheme out there available and the competition between the major suppliers, you could say that there's a certain cost efficiency. The pay-as-you-go pricing allows you, your organization, to pay only for the resources you use. You probably have heard of Elastic from Amazon, things like that, and reducing upfront capital expenses. And that's not negligible in a budget. And a lot of CIOs will make decisions sometimes 90% based on that, right? The scalability, easy scale resources up and down to meet changing demands without the need for significant hardware investment or reinvestment. The global reach, the public cloud providers have data centers worldwide, ensuring the low latency access for user globally. When they don't, you may have sovereignty of data issues, as I've encountered in the past, that force some of the big players to actually produce a mirror specifically in the country and sometimes even in the state. For managed services, that's also a pro because public cloud providers offer a wide range of managed services. I mean, if you look at the portfolio, it's just mind-numbing. They cover pretty much everything you can think of these days. And that reduces the burden, of infrastructure management by the staff. So you can actually save a bit on that, and have much better offer at more competitive prices. Of course, the quick deployment, you see infrastructure as code and things like that available to you, the containerization, Kubernetes systems and so on. That allows you for rapid provisioning of resources. That allows for quick application deployment and testing as well, if you manage that well. The cons, however, is that there's a lot of opacity in terms of security and compliance, right? You have to trust your supplier. Security concerns exist due to the shared infrastructure as well, requiring robust security measures and compliance efforts as well. In terms of data privacy, organizations may have limited control over the data, or they have a way it's stored, potentially raising data privacy and sovereignty issues, as I mentioned earlier. The limited customization is that some level of customization may be restricted, limiting the ability to fine-tune infrastructure-specific requirement. You might have some very, very, very unique needs in some projects or in just the way you connect business that no, I would say, suppliers are willing to bend, backwards and forward to please, or we'll have to charge you an arm and a leg. I think about SAP, for example, can do pretty much anything you want in terms of coding, but at a very, very hefty price. And that would maybe defeat the cost savings. Some use cases for public cloud would be the web applications. Well, public cloud is ideal for web application and website. It fluctuates, traffic patterns. You've got developers can leverage the cloud for creating development and testing environments, scaling resources as needed. The big data analytics, the public cloud platforms here provide a scalability required for processing large data sets and running analytics workloads. Disaster recovery, I would say here that organization can use the public cloud for cost-effective disaster recovery solutions, replicating data and applications offsite. The private cloud now. Comparatively, the pros of private cloud would be that it offers more control and security over data and infrastructure, making them suitable for sensitive workloads. As I've said before, customization, organization can now tailor private cloud environments to specific requirements and compliance needs. In terms of compliance, private clouds are often used in industries with strict regulation or regulatory requirements, such as healthcare, finance, defense. The predictable performance would be here dedicated resources providing such predictable and consistent performance for critical applications, for instance. Now, the cons. Well, when you start making your own, we've all gone through that, and you know that private clouds typically involve higher cost, higher upfront costs, capital expenditure for hardware, infrastructure, setup, ongoing management. There's also some limited scalability. Scaling a private cloud can be more challenging and expensive compared to public cloud solutions. From a complexity side of things, managing and maintaining a private cloud can be complex and requires skilled IT team as well. And that can be hard to find or to keep. We have this kind of workforce that is very mobile, wants to work from home and likes to grasshop between jobs. Very difficult sometimes to motivate them in staying for the longer term. Now, the use cases for private clouds will be where you have highly sensitive data. Now, private clouds are suitable for industries like healthcare, finance that can handle sensitive data subject to, sensitive data that is subjected to strict compliance requirements. The government entities often use private clouds to maintain the control over data and to adhere to security regulations. Organizations with legacy systems that cannot easily migrate to the public cloud that can also benefit from a private cloud. And research and development, where private clouds can provide the flexibility to create specialized research and development environments. What about hybrid clouds? I said earlier that it combines both public and private cloud elements. Some advantages would say, why does it do that? I should say that first, it combines both public and private clouds elements to balance the cost effectiveness with control and security. The advantages would be to provide flexibility, scalability, and data security while leveraging the benefits of public cloud resources. We've got some implementation challenges, though. It needs thorough planning because integrating and managing resources in a hybrid environment can be quite complex and tricky. That's why it requires careful planning and expertise. Again, when we talk about expertise, we have to talk about the kind of workforce that may or may not be available to you when you need it. And it's expensive to get them on full time, but if you want to just hire them as contractors, you may not have them available straight away when you need them. Now, the multi-cloud strategy has some benefits because it reduces the vendor lock-in, improves resilience, allows leveraging specialized services from multiple vendors. It also, the risk mitigation for multi-cloud strategy would be to diversify across multiple cloud providers to help mitigate those risks associated with outages or service disruptions. When you manage a multi-cloud strategy, you have obviously numerous benefits such as vendor diversity, redundancy, and the ability to leverage best-of-breed services from multiple cloud providers. But it also comes with some management challenges like complexity, right? Where you're managing multiple cloud providers and services can become complex, especially as the number of services and deployments grows. Coordinating configurations, monitoring and governance across different environments can be also very challenging. We There's a vendor lock-in mitigation, where avoiding the vendor lock-in by using, say, multiple cloud providers is a pro, right? It's an advantage, but it also means that organizations, they need to ensure their applications and services remain portable and avoid becoming too tightly coupled with a specific provider's services. We're talking essentially about freedom here, freedom of thought, freedom of, so if you have a very innovative environment, very agile, you may be in trouble. The cost optimization, it can be more complicated with multiple providers, like tracking and optimizing spending across different cloud platforms. That requires basically advanced monitoring, cost management tools, maybe some specialists, full-timers there. You may have to create special roles just to look after contracting and checking cost. So there could be some false economy there. The security and compliance, that each cloud provider has, that as its own security features, compliance requirements, their own IP to try to do better, bid the market, etc. So it's ensuring consistent security policies and compliance across multiple clouds that can be complex. And I see a lot of clients struggle big times through this. Managing data integration and data consistency across multiple cloud environments, that can also be very challenging because we're adding complexity. Data movement, synchronization, and transformation need also careful planning. Monitoring and visibility, monitoring and gaining visibility into the performance and health of applications and services across different cloud platforms can also be very complex. Organizations often need multi-cloud monitoring solutions. And again, we're talking about more complexity, more things to look after, more risk of things to break down, and so on, especially when it comes to updates, those systems, and one can break it all. We see that in microservice architecture quite a lot as well. Efficient allocating and scaling resources across different clouds can therefore be complex, as we've seen, as each provider may have different provisioning, scaling mechanism, contracting, specificities. So how do we try to combine, to cater for that? Well, I guess I'm beating my own drum here because I'm a trainer, but training and expertise in terms of providing and building expertise in-house, that goes without saying, is crucial for success, right? IT teams need to have expertise, but where to get that and how to retain them is the problem I've raised before in managing those multiple cloud providers and staying updated, with the constantly evolving cloud services from each provider. The trainings to be adequate needs to be up to speed, so your staff can have those resources at hand as soon as they need them. And there's always a struggle with more training, better training takes time, and we can't just afford to let those guys go for 2, 3, 4, 5 days. Self-help is good, but they don't have the direct feedback that virtual face-to-face training actually provides. I see a much more throughput and much more outcome out of face-to-face or virtual training than I see from LMS and self-taught training. Governance and policies, establishing consistent governance policies and access controls across multiple cloud environments is critical, but that's also challenging to implement and enforce. If you've done a bit of security architecture role like I have, you will know what I'm talking about. CISO role as well, they struggle because they don't have necessarily this kind of asset security classification in place in the first instance, so they can't really compare. There's nothing to actually use as a template or pattern to decide to what level an asset needs to be protected. Service level agreement, managing SLAs across different cloud providers, and ensuring they align with business requirements can be complex. Disaster recovery, designing and testing disaster recovery and recovery system and business continuity plans that span across multiple cloud providers. That also requires a lot of planning, a lot of governance. And that's, again, false economy to think that, because I do it online, it's easier. It's not as easier at all. and not necessarily cheaper. So building and maintaining relationship with multiple cloud vendors can be time consuming, but allows you to have a certain duplication that could be very useful if things go awry, right? It's essential to stay informed about their roadmap and offerings, though. You can't just trust what salesmen tell you, you know that. Data security, when you implement encryption, access controls, monitoring to safeguard data in the cloud. So you would hope that this is provided clearly in writing in the contract, and it wouldn't be the black box approach where they say you don't need to know and do the Jedi trick to you, no? Compliance regulation, ensuring compliance with industry-specific regulations, like I mentioned before, amongst the best-known one, HAPA or SOX, Sarbanes-Oxley for the finance organizations out there, GDPR, the data protection, and BCR DSS for the credit card systems. All that need to be at least understood clearly by your CISO and or your security architect before you actually go into designing a cloud service offer. So cloud security is a top priority for organizations using cloud services and compliance with industry regulations. It's obviously crucial. Everybody agrees on that, right? I'm going to share with you, though, some cloud security best practices with a focus on security and compliance per se. One would be to understand shared responsibility. Recognize the shared responsibility model. The cloud providers are responsible for the security of the cloud infrastructure, like physical data centers, networking, and so on, while customers are responsible for securing their own data and applications within the cloud, depending on the agreements, of course. Now, encrypting data at rest and in transit to protect it from authorized access. I don't think I need to teach you about that. That goes without saying, it's one of the oldest things in the book in terms of security implementation. Using encryption services providing by the cloud provider or third-party encryption tools. You may know that these days it's very, very hard to crack encryption. So generally hacks and several types of attacks try to aim for the I would say the weak point, which is pretty much the user point, right? Implementing key management practices to securely manage encryption keys, especially when we talk about secret keys, right? Enforcing strict access controls and using the principle of least privilege, granting the minimum necessary access, has always been the number one, rule set to keep it as safe as possible. When you have I would say separation of duties as well. The same rules apply to cloud they would, in a legacy system or on premises. Implementing strong authentication method as well, such as multi-factor authentication. I mean, who does not use at least 2FAs, two-factor authentication, when you're accessing some resources online, websites, you're managing a website, for example? That's the very bare minimum. You also rename the admin user, so no one can log in trying to log in with admin. You have to use something unique instead. That also it adds obfuscation more than security, but that's everything that makes it harder for someone to get in, is gold to me, especially if it doesn't cost much. We set up comprehensive logging for all cloud services and regularly review logs for suspicious activities. We implement real-time monitoring to detect security incidents and breaches. We try to do that as promptly as possible. You've got SIEM out there. You've got a lot of tooling that tries to make sense of all this data collected by the different security operators. We have using security groups, firewalls, network segmentation to control traffic flow and isolate resources, limiting public exposure, and use private networks, for sensitive data. Everything, like I said, that adds extra loops makes it harder and harder, therefore more lengthy for any attackers to get to the Holy Grail is welcome in my book, but not at the expense of business flow. That's why having a security asset classification system in place allows to give these kind of level of security for each asset with tolerances that are meaningful and realistic to be used through enterprise architecture projects. We've got, but it's important to do regular audits, assessing cloud configurations and resources for compliance with relevant regulations and security best practices. considering using compliance automation tools, okay, to streamline this process. It's great. There's a lot of tools out there. You know, you get what you pay for. There's great offers, but you probably have heard as well of the fools with tools, right? Now, it's not just about having a full gear on and pressing buttons that's going to actually do the job for you. You still need to have people who understand the end result, what they're trying to achieve by using certain tools. Some of them can be redundant, some of them can be conflicting. So that's also something that your architecture team should look at. We classify data based on sensitivity and implement appropriate access controls and encryption. I mentioned to you before the criticality of having an asset security classification method. I've designed a simple one, which I deploy through my surf. If you're interested, you can learn more about this on my website. It is gradually being put on it for availability. It's very important to ensure you've got a standard, approach to asset classification and therefore use and security. And there will be no asset classification if you don't already have embedded in your process the concept of having an asset owner and an asset custodian. So that would effectively be dictated through clear policies that are useful because they are understandable and realistic, easy to implement. Use the SMART principle: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, time-bound. SMART principles prevails everywhere with me. And I make a big sense of that during my TOGAF classes and business architecture training classes. We need to develop and regularly update incident responses plans as well, specific to the cloud environment that you've designed. It's not just one size fits all, doesn't work like that. Test the plan through simulated exercises. Nothing beats practices, really. Putting the stakeholders in front of real life exercises, that's goal to me. And ensure, therefore, their readiness in the event of security incidents. So it becomes second nature, basically. You've got vendor risk assessment, assessing their security practices and compliance posture of cloud providers before selecting them. Understand the provider's security certifications and compliance with industry standards. Keep the cloud resources and virtual machines, if you use them, up to date with security patches. But test those patches thoroughly. Don't just trust the provider. I've seen massive issues by people who blindly implemented the patching, say, from a well-known company that patches every week, or I will not mention. And that effectively created the domino effects, and it was very hard to go back. So that's where the disaster recovery plan kicked in big time. Implementing automated patch management system for efficiency saves you time, maybe a bit of money, but be very careful at the result, because, like I said, the computer can screw things up much faster than a human being can. Be aware of where your data is stored and which legal jurisdictions apply. Ensure compliance with data protection regulations like GDPR, HAPIA, SOX, Sarbanes-Oxley. Train your employees on cloud security best practices and data handling policies. There's a lot of different things out there in terms of training. Not all are good, or not all are good for you. Okay, you also have to define exactly your needs first before you go to tender for that. You need to promote a culture of security awareness with the organization. It's everybody's business. Not everybody's responsibility. I heard that responsibility. It's everybody's responsibility. No, but it's everybody's business to be aware. If you responsibilize everyone around security, they're going to stress and they're probably going to leave and say, I can't take that responsibility. But if it's their business to be aware, to read what you provide, to go to the training class and so on, then yes, everybody should normally comply with that. Now, we need to consider using third-party security tools and services for added layers of protection, such as intrusion detection system, or ADS for short, security information event management, the SIEM systems I mentioned before. There's also conducting regular security assessment, vulnerability scanning, and penetration testing, to identify and address weaknesses. Maintaining comprehensive documentation of security configurations, policies, and procedures, not because they have to be read when something happened, that's sometimes too late, but to sensibilize people and give them the awareness that they need. You don't say, if something happens, read all these 250 pages. No, they should have actually gone through them And when I wrote manuals, I always made sure that every concept were explained in 3 different ways, some verbal, some more hands-on kind of things, and one more visual. So it pleased every learning abilities out there. No one could say that they could not read a policy because they couldn't understand it. And so we need to generate compliance reports. That's for the C class, to demonstrate adherence to industry regulation. That's for the auditors. That's for government, etc. But they don't need to be that complicated. I mean, why should we give everything to do to 1 or 2 people when, in fact, if you've got those assets, owners, and custodians, that's thousands of people in a larger corporation. All of them can have a little bit, to do and responsibility, and therefore they can combine that. All you have to do is centralize, combine that in a meaningful fashion that can be easily generated. So you have to remember that cloud security, it's an ongoing process, and staying vigilant against emerging threats and evolving regulations. That's all you're supposed to do, right? If you've shown you've done your best you can do, you can't be blamed, right? Now, regularly review, update your security practices to ensure the continued protection of your cloud-based assets and compliance with relevant standards. That's what it's all about. Nothing more than that. You want to, it's the Kellogg's principle, the just right approach. Not too much, not too little. But for that, you have to define what your specific needs are. We talk about scalability by mentioning that scalable can be done vertically or horizontally. You choose between increasing the power of existing resources, that's vertical, or adding more identical resources, horizontal, based on scalability needs. The auto-scaling is good, but be careful they don't catch you up in terms of cost. Implementing auto-scaling to automatically adjust resources and respond to what we call fluctuations of demand. We've seen that with Amazon, the first one who came up with elasticity offer, and that was fantastic for small businesses who started to do, from brick and mortar to click and mortar, and trying to actually sell online and starting to be successful at it, but realize, oh my God, I plan too small, basically. I need more help now. I need to grow fast, and I need the system to follow me. So that's the kind of things that I think are very very important to keep in mind. So be careful that auto-scaling serves you and not necessarily a supplier. Cloud elasticity, as I said, often referred to as elasticity, plain and short, or scalability in cloud computing. It's a fundamental characteristic, and that describes the ability of a cloud system to dynamically allocate and deallocate computing resources based on the current workflow or demand that you have right there, right now. And it enables organizations to seamlessly and automatically scale your IT infrastructure, your virtual IT infrastructure, up or down in response to your changing needs, growing market, without necessarily having this manual intervention that takes time and could be quite complex. Some key aspects will be to automate that, So you've got this automation allows the resources such as virtual machines, storage, network bandwidth to be provisioned or deprovisioned automatically as the demand for computing resources fluctuates. This process is typically driven by predefined rules of policy. So if you made a mistake in the rules and policies, you catch my drift, you see the problem you could have. You could actually solve the branch on which you're sitting. So be very careful with that. See, cloud can be quite complex and quite demanding. Now, you've got in elasticity, it supports both scaling out, horizontal scaling, as I said before, and scaling in, horizontal or vertical scaling of resources. Scaling out involves adding more instances of a resource to handle increased demand, while scaling in involves like reducing resources allocation during the period of low demand, so you don't want to have to pay. It would be great if we could do that with phones, wouldn't it? Imagine that. And pay-as-you-go model, elasticity aligns with the pay-as-you-go or pay for what you use billing model. That's fantastic, really. It's a model that's common now in cloud services. Organizations are charged based on only what they consume, making it quite cost-effective as resources are automatically scaled to match the demand. You've got the cloud elasticity that provides flexibility and agility, allowing organizations to respond rapidly to changes in workloads and traffic spikes and other operational requirements. You've got elastic scaling that can improve, the ability of applications and services. That's done by ensuring that resources are added or removed to maintain performance and availability, even if the face of hardware failures, for instance, or other massive disruption. We even test that with Chaos Monkey. You may have heard of that. The load balancing, that's often used in conjunction with elasticity to distribute the incoming traffic evenly amongst the multiple instances of an application or service, ensuring the efficient resource utilization. And the cloud orchestration tools and automation, they're also quite crucial, in the system in managing the elasticity of cloud resources overall, like an orchestra conductor. That's what the term orchestration comes from. These tools help define the rules and conditions for scaling and automating the provisioning and deprovisioning processes. Cloud elasticity is therefore, as you can see, it's useful, right? It's a valuable feature for businesses of all sizes. It allows you to optimize resource utilization, therefore cost, improving the cost effectiveness, and to deliver responsive and highly available services to customer. It's a fundamental component of cloud computing, and it empowers organizations to adapt to the changing needs of the market, with speed and efficiency. But I warn you, be careful, because if you rely too much on automation, for example, or too much on the supplier, they may or may not understand your business as well as you do. That's why your business architect should be there to ensure that what is required for you to purchase, to contract in, is exactly what you need. We're offering some solutions like infrastructure as a service, providing scalable and on-demand infrastructure resources, including virtual machines, storage, networking to support cloud deployment. You got the platform as a service. You probably heard of that already. Simplify the application development, the deployment, management, reducing the need for customers to manage underlying infrastructure. The software as a service to deliver the ready-to-use software application via the cloud, eliminating the need for customers to install, maintain, all these licensing things, or update the software locally. You've got the multi-cloud solution. Oopsie, didn't go fast. That provides solutions for managing and orchestrating the resources across multiple cloud providers to maximize the flexibility and resilience. The hybrid cloud offers services and tools for seamlessly integrating on-premises or infrastructure with the cloud environments. That facilitates, the hybrid cloud deployments. The cloud security service delivers comprehensive security solutions, including identity and access management, encryption, threat detection, to protect your data and applications in the cloud. You've got your data storage management to provide you with scalable and highly available cloud storage solutions with options for structured and unstructured data. You got disaster recovery to offer you the disaster recovery solution that you may need when things go awry, and backup solutions to ensure data protection and business continuity. Let's not confuse talking about that, the business continuity with the disaster recovery. Disaster recovery is to get your system back in business, but the business continuity is sometimes very hands-on, very manual to replace the systems that have broken down. And I see people still being confused about that. The containerization and orchestration provides, when you provide containerization platforms like Kubernetes and orchestration services to simplify the deployment and management of containerized application, that's what we talk about. Serverless computing is enabling computing options for serverless computing to allow customers to run the code in response to events without managing servers infrastructure. Again, we're talking a lot about automation as well here. And the data analytics as if you use cloud-based data analytics and machine learning service for processing and gaining, you're trying to gain insight, basically. Try to gain insights from large data sets. It's almost impossible to do manually these days. You need those dashboards, those tools that actually do that quite very well. Iris is a German tool, I think, that now belongs to Alphabet. That is quite good to make sense of a very complex architecture environment. DevOps and continuous improvement, continuous delivery, CI/CD provides therefore DevOps tools, and the pipelines for CI/CD for automating the software development and deployment processes. I see a lot of cloud providers now specializing in offering this for developers these days. It's also great for sharing. You probably know about GitHub, etc., and sharing codes across from different platforms, different environments around the world. We've got offering cloud monitoring, management, optimization tools to ensure efficient resources utilization performance. The cost management, providing services and tools to help customers optimize their costs, the cloud cost per se, identify cost-saving opportunities and monitor spendings. The compliance as well can also be provided to you via solution by delivering you services to help you maintaining regulatory compliance, and that's quite complex. So I would actually look into this quite seriously, depending which industry you work in, and establishing governance policies with a cloud-based environment. Especially these guys, guarantee there are probably a lot of lawyers in those supply. I mean, these cloud suppliers, those service suppliers, and they stay afloat. Just like if you want to make sure you don't make any mistake and leverage all the goodies from ATO, you actually, tax office, then you hire a proper tax agent, because their job, and that's what you pay them for, is to keep afloat with all the newest, latest regulations and so on. It's just amazing that you probably don't have time to do yourself, right? Assisting migration applications and workloads from on-premises infrastructure to the cloud, ensuring a smooth transition. That's also a service you can benefit from. Or you can also have custom development services and consulting to tailor cloud solutions to specific business needs and challenges. That's if your business architect's done a good job to define those needs in the first place. Of course, providing fully managed cloud services, including 24/7 support, maintenance, and monitoring to offload operational responsibility from customers. And training education. I will never cease to say that good training is worth gold to an organization. Yours, your clients, offering the proper training programs with educational resources to help you, your staff, build the cloud expertise that you deserve, and maximizing the benefits of cloud solution. Never underestimate the power of good training, my friend. These are just a few of cloud solution offerings that that cater for all your needs or diverse business needs you may have, and your requirements in deciding or not if you want to move to the cloud. It's not an exhaustive list, of course, and depending on your context, your objectives, etc., cloud service providers and consultants like Daniel and myself can tailor our offering to you precisely to meet your unique demand. So cost consideration, you pay as you go. We've talked about that, decide between flexible pay as you go pricing and cost saving from reserved instances. The calculation of TCO, total cost of ownership, versus maximum return of investment, ROI. Calculate long-term costs of your chosen cloud architecture, including the hidden cost. The one you figure out just at the end when you think that you thought that you covered everything, like data transfer fees and things, or fluctuating fees, or tiny little writings in the contract that you did not read properly. Also the tools and practices to monitor and optimize cloud spending, such as right-sizing instances and using the spot instances where they're applicable. I always say to my clients, especially as consultants, is that always start small, aim small. Do everything as manual as you can, so everybody understands the mechanism behind all this. And once you've got that, to be able to scale up, then you automate a lot of these things, so you save yourself the time and you can take more jobs. But at least everybody has a good, thorough understanding what's going on under the hood, basically. Some case studies, you got Netflix architecture. They adopted microservice architecture, and they're using AWS. They use the Amazon EC2 and S3 storage and Lambda application. They also throw the spanner by using the Chaos Monkey to try to test the system resilience. They embrace, therefore, the microservices for agility and scalability, and they implement automated testing and chaos engineering to ensure, therefore, their resilience, and they use native cloud tools and services for optimal performance. Airbnb, they use AWS and leverages the Lambda, Amazon S3 storage, and other services. They've also adapted service-oriented architecture that allows teams to build and deploy independently. They enable scalability as well. They use SCSI for Lambda. Obviously, there's doing a lot of development behind the scenes for cost effectiveness, serverless computing, and implement DevOps practices to streamline development and deployment. Dropbox, the third case study for you today, use a combination of cloud providers, including, but not just, AWS, leveraging cloud storage, data synchronization to provide large file storage that we all know and benefit from, and sharing services. They consider multi-cloud strategies for redundancy and resilience, because redundancy is key to their success. Availability is huge, right? Imagine that they go offline, like eBay, things like that. That's absolutely destructive for them. And optimizing data synchronization and storage to handle the large-scale user data. So best practices, we design for failure here. We try to minimize our chance of failure by using redundancy, designing your architecture with redundancy across multiple availability zones or regions to minimize the impact of hardware failure outages. The implementation of automated failure or failover mechanism of failure prevention, so failover mechanism to redirect the traffic to healthy resources when failures occur, ensuring uninterrupted services. You probably have heard of what they've done from a government perspective, mostly in New Zealand after a big earthquake. Stateless services, they design application to be stateless whenever possible. This allows for easy replication and scaling without complex data synchronization. The chaos engineering to conduct regular chaos engineering experiments, throwing the spanner into the wheels, see what breaks, basically, to proactively identify the weaknesses in your system resilience and improve it accordingly. And backup and recovery, always a must to have. Still see a lot of people who don't even have that at home, which is quite scary. Establishing robust backup and recovery strategies, ensuring the data is regularly backed up and recovery processes are well documented and tested. So here are the best practice for cloud architecture as well. Again, for designing with failure in mind, failure recovery in mind, we've got infrastructure as code using IAC, infrastructure as code, like Terraform or AWS CloudFormation, to automate the provisioning and management of cloud resources, enabling consistent and repeatable deployments. You've got also the implementing CI/CD pipelines to automate application deployment testing. Again, V-shaped testing, you probably have seen that. We designed the test before you code. And integration, reducing manual errors and accelerating development cycles. The auto-scaling, to set up auto-scaling rules to automatically adjust resources based on workload and ensuring optimal performance and cost efficiency. You've got orchestration. We use that to tools like Kubernetes, for managing containerized applications, for ensuring automation across the clusters. We've got, we can embrace, event-driven architectures that trigger actions and workflows based on specific events or conditions, reducing manual intervention. We have object-driven or event-driven architecture and we use those kind of events to actually drive us kickstarting a new request for architecture. Microservices, we adopt that type of architecture to break down the applications into smaller, independently deployable services, enhancing agility and scalability. We leverage the serverless platforms like AWS Lambda, for example, or Azure, Microsoft Azure functions for event-driven workloads, eliminating the need to manage a server infrastructure ourselves. Containerization, we containerize the application using Docker and container orchestration platform like Kubernetes for portability and efficient resource utilization. We used managed services we choose cloud-native managed services for databases, caching, queuing, and more to offload operational overhead and leverage cloud provider expertise. And we emphasize cloud-native development practices, including using cloud-native database, APIs, and event-driven programming models as well. Monitoring tools to implement comprehensive monitoring solutions like we see AWS CloudWatch or Prometheus to collect performance data, track system health, set up alerts. We continuously monitor and analyze cloud spending, leveraging tools like AWS Cost Explorer or Azure Cost Management to optimize cost. We've got periodically review resource utilization and right-sized instances to match actual requirements and avoiding over provisioning. We do performance tuning, to regularly fine tune applications and database configurations to optimize performance and reduce the resource consumption. And of course, we analyze logs and metrics to identify performance bottlenecks and areas for improvement. Then make data-driven optimization, for instance. So if we use those selected few best practices, that should not only make you apprehend your cloud, move to the cloud, if not already your cloud enhancement quite efficiently. Here are some bullet points. We talk about business objective. We need to define a clear objective. We're talking about migration planning down the line. Once you finish your design, logical design, so we need to actually now define a clear business objectives, aligning the cloud adoption goals with organization goals. That's what a business architect will help you do. Conducting an inventory of existing IT assets, applications, and infrastructure to assess readiness for cloud migration. Do not proceed unless you've done that, basically. You'll also have estimation of the total cost of ownership for on-premises infrastructure compared to the cloud to determine potential cost savings. We've got identifying the potential risk, security concerns, and compliance requirements that may impact the migration plan. We have also evaluating each application for its suitability for the clouds, considering factors like architecture, dependencies, data sensitivity, and creating a phase roadmap outlining the sequences of migration, prioritization of critical workloads and low-risk application. These are things that your EA and your proper enterprise architecture team could help you with. Once you're ready to implement, you've got a migration approach, choosing between rehosting, lift and shift, or replatforming, lift, tinker and shift, or refactoring, rebuilding, or replacing applications when planning the migration strategy. You've got plan the data migration strategies, including the selection of tools and methods for moving data to the clouds while ensuring data integrity and security. You've got testing, defining a comprehensive testing strategy, including functional performance, security testing, validation of application functionality post-migration. And don't forget the training, of course, training the IT team, your architecture team to stay at the top of their game, with end user on mind, and cloud technologies to best practice and for cloud adoption. All these kind of things need to be continuously reminded, to ensure that always they keep always the value added, in mind. Now, we develop a change management plan to prepare the organization for the cultural and operational changes associated with cloud adoption. Every change needs to be carefully documented, and especially the change implications need to be properly understood as well. Then we can provision the resources, choose the application migration if that's what's at stake. We do monitoring and testing down the line. Don't forget all the security and compliance we plan to actually implement as well, and ensure that your failover redundancy are working by testing it, testing. Eventually, you can have your regular review of cloud cost to make sure that you're not overspending. You do your performance tuning regularly as well. That could also be done by your provider, actually, under contract as well, if you pay extra. Security enhancements, anything that you can see by monitoring the threats, then you can actually embed that into your security plan. Scaling strategies, automation, feedback loop. The feedback loop, if you do DevOps, especially with me, you'll know about the feedback loop as well, to ensure that we continuously learn and improve our maturity. All right, finally, the cost. We understand the various cloud architecture options provide different costing, depending on what we've seen. We need to conduct a thorough assessment of your firm's need in order for you to make a decision regarding, for example, the workload requirement, data sensitivity, the compliance regulation that you are being constrained by, budget, etc. We have the shared responsibility model that needs also to be taken into consideration. The scalability possibilities you may need in the future. So you need to have a crystal ball. Maybe you do your 3 horizon strategy evaluation, 3, 7, 20 years, for instance. And then you can actually consider, whether you want to go as pay-as-you-go pricing or reserve instances, ongoing management costs, etc. The security and compliance, again, I think what can I say to finish on that, making sure that you really have a good understanding, and no one will beat, the expertise of a CISO or a security architect to provide you with the right necessary knowledge. The decision is made by the CEO, but it's really an expert that can actually make those decisions and actually advise you correctly. Then you go to vendor selection. It's not because it's the cheapest, that's the best, that, right? Or not the most expensive, that will provide you the best value for money. And finally, implement monitoring optimization practices in architecture. Once we deploy a solution, we never just, like project management, tick a box, it's all implemented properly, job's done. But for architects, it goes throughout. This monitoring goes on and on throughout the entire life cycle of the solution. We ensure that we can remedy if our strategic impact is not as good as we expected, because basically cloud architecture can have a significant impact on your firm's overall business strategy. It can affect your agility, your scalability, your cost effectiveness, your operational efficiency, your security stance, your scalability possibilities, and of course, cost management overall. So you need to make sure that you continue to initiate a thorough assessment of what you need. So that's what the business architects will do continuously. Consulting experts, don't be afraid to ask for help. Making sure that you can always put the vendor, the contract back on the table if need be. Implementation, make sure that the implementation of your chosen cloud architecture is matching, has a proper configuration, is implementing security. We tend to let the ball, or to let ourselves drift a bit if we stay too long with a supplier. They tend to be a bit of, let's say, laziness that comes into place as well. That can be costly down the line. The training and education, please don't underestimate the power of training education, especially on continuous. The monitoring optimization, the periodic review, and the feedback loop. I think I've covered it all, and I want to make sure that you understand also the performance impact of these. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you for your attention. Quite a lot to cover, and I hope that you got something out of it. I'll hand over back to my friend Daniel now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Axel. It was a little longer than anticipated, and I hope that everyone enjoyed the content, a lot of it, good content. And we'll leave it at that. We do not have time for questions, I'm afraid to say, but do not hesitate to contact either Axel or myself. And we're both easily searchable on LinkedIn if you want to connect with us. And on that note, I'll leave you to the rest of your day. And thank you for popping by. Thank you.